Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Institute of Export and International Trade Question Time broadcast. As the Institute's Director General, I want to thank you all for joining us today for what is the first in a series of live interviews, providing a platform to discuss the challenges and opportunities in international trade and to share experiences and insights. For today's Q&A, we are extraordinarily pleased to have with us Graham Stuart MP, who is the Minister for Export and is a tireless advocate for the benefits and value for international trade. And today's session is titled An Export-Led UK Economic Recovery. Minister, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be with us.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be with you, Marco.
Great. You've certainly sparked a great deal of interest, Minister. We've got over 500 people who've registered to join us and to watch. Now, we've only got half an hour with the Minister today, so anyone watching or participating, if you want to ask a question, please use the chat function on the right-hand side of the panel. If you can't see it, please use the arrow in the toolbar to submit any of the questions. Mister, that's a technical bit done. I'd like to start really by asking you exactly what is it that's in your portfolio?
Well, good question, Marco, and thank you. And thank you to everyone who's decided to join the call. I'll go even above my portfolio, if I may, Marco. The Department for International Trade has only existed since 2016 after our decision to leave the European Union. And I would say we only do three things, fairly simple things. We promote exports, we promote investment, people investing into the UK, and we tear down barriers to business around the world. So that's marquee free trade agreements right through to mutual recognition of a professional qualification, etc. So that's what the department does. So I'm the exports minister, so I have that part of the puzzle. I'm responsible for export policy and promotion. I'm the minister responsible for UK Export Finance, our award-winning export credit agency. I have personal responsibility for UK defence and security exports. I'm also the climate change and COP26 minister in the department as well, and hopefully we may have an opportunity to touch on that later. I'm responsible for the GREAT campaign, which is the largest advertising campaign across government, certainly pre-COVID it was, and GREAT both promotes, as you know, exporting domestically as well as sending a kind of ready-to-trade message to markets abroad. So I'm also responsible for trade missions and indeed for global events. So Dubai 2020, the World Expo, which is now in 2021, I'm responsible for that. And kind of major global events which we'll use to promote the UK. So of course we've got the Commonwealth Games coming up in Birmingham and that sort of thing as well. So that's a quick overview of the kind of headline levels responsibility in the job.
Brilliant, incredibly wide-ranging and core and fundamental, of course, to encouraging and supporting the UK economy more generally, particularly as we recover from COVID-19. I just wonder, you mentioned COVID-19. Do you feel that there has been or there are any upside exporter experiences since March that we should be highlighting and can learn from?
Well, it seems almost indelicate to talk about sort of upsides. The impact of the pandemic in March and April was severe economically. In terms of the trade numbers, you were looking at sort of around 25% plus drop, which is pretty catastrophic in exports and imports. But we've seen an interesting recovery since then. By the end of June, we were back to running at about 6.5% below where we had been pre-COVID. And on our real-time data, we won't get ONS data till a little bit later. We look to have moved back pretty much to where we were pre-COVID. So that's an interesting context. In terms of the positives, well, obviously anyone involved in we're big pharma and academic capability, and so you've seen Oxford perhaps most famously getting involved. So there's been I think recognition of the importance of pharmaceutical industry and the academic brilliance that sits under it. That's, if you like, a positive. And I suppose it's this sort of virtual event. I mean, it should be. I mean, online, as we know, has its own challenges, but it's possible to bring people together from all over the world and have a conversation in a more efficient way than it was before because of the technological acceleration that we've seen. So I'd highlight that. Just to say, in terms of where we were at pre-COVID, I know it doesn't answer your question, but just worth setting it out, because UNCTAD, which is the UN trade body, that comes up with it's the equivalent of the ONS globally, I would say, when there are lots of people produce lots of sets of data, and you'll know better than me, Marco, the complexity of understanding it all. But UNCTAD, about 3 weeks ago, came out with the 2019 numbers, and it showed that the UK had overtaken France and was back to being the 5th largest exporter in the world. You might say to me, you haven't done a very good job of communicating that yet, and I suppose I need to get on with that, but I thought it was very solid news. Our exports grew to more than 700 billion for the first time, and in the 2018 export strategy, our exports by that point had reached about 30% of GDP as a way of valuing it, as a percentage. And we said we wanted in the 2018 strategy to move to 35%, which would put us in the sort of upper end of the G7 for exports. We wouldn't be outdoing Germany, but we would be moving solidly in the right direction. And the OBR, as I call, suggested actually from their analysis, the number in fact would go the exact opposite direction and would fall back down to about 25, 27%, back where it had been for the last decades. And by the end of 2019, we were at 31.2% of GDP. And as I say, had overtaken France, which is both an important business factor as well as one giving personal pleasure. And UN, in addition, showed last year, which when you think of all the challenges and whatever you think about Brexit, the uncertainties from Brexit, the UN also showed that in investment, foreign direct investment, we had overtaken someone else. We'd overtaken Hong Kong. And we now, in 2019, having become the 5th largest exporter in the world, we're now the 2nd largest host of accumulated stock of foreign direct investments. That's foreign companies buying significant stakes of businesses here in the world, behind only the United States. So I think in investment terms, the most successful major economy in the world by size, and had more investment last year than France or Germany, in fact more than France and Germany combined. So that's quite a solid background. I just throw that in because it doesn't, if you read the FT as regularly as I do, you will find that they seem to have a remarkable inability ever to report anything positive about our economic performance in either investment or indeed exports.
Yeah, absolutely. And with regards to direct foreign investment, what's important about that, of course, is that on the whole, that's businesses investing for products that will then be, or services that will then be exported. So it's an important indicator, and so tremendous congratulations on that success. Earlier in September, just continuing, and I don't want to dwell on recovery from COVID too long, but with regards to the announcement earlier in September of the bounce back measures for consumer and retail businesses to export overseas. I wonder if you could just give a little bit more colour and detail around the programme that your department announced.
Yeah, well, we've come up with a series of bounce back plans. So we've done a bounce back plan. The first one was tech, and that, for instance, had the Tech Export Academy as a component in that. That saw well over 100 companies apply. That was whittled down to 30, and then they are entering an intense period of sort of mentoring and support from assembled major companies who've done that on a pro bono basis. Of course, again, this technology makes it easier for senior people to genuinely give their time and support smaller businesses in understanding international markets. So that's happening, and then they will go on an organised trade mission that we're putting together to Thailand. And when I launched the finalists and announced the 30 winners, so to speak, a Thai minister joined me on the call, and that's a positive thing. We've also done bounce back plans in agriculture, food and drink, again seeking to use all the powers that we've got, not least intensifying the kind of virtual meetings, meet the buyer events, and the like, to accelerate people's return to the international markets or encourage them to enter international markets for the first time. And as you say, in consumer goods as well, looking to encourage people to get out there. I mean, one of the major jobs we have is to share the opportunities that we're helping create. And you've seen that we recently signed our first major free trade agreement with Japan, the world's third largest economy. We've been able to go beyond the EU-Japan deal, because there are two schools of thought, both of which have valid points to make. One is you'll never get this as good a deal as the EU because you haven't got the clout. It tends to be the same people who bemoan everything. And likewise, you have triumphalists on the other side saying, we'll always do better. But there are benefits to being able to negotiate only for UK interests. So we were able to do a deal with the Japanese on digital and data issues, for instance, on sharing of your proprietary code, and in fact you didn't need to do that, making it possible to retain data or move data between the jurisdictions with suitable rules, protecting consumers and businesses alike, in a way that I think is going to become more and more important going forward. So I just throw that in because that's kind of a model. We're working with Australia and New Zealand. We're looking to join the CPTPP, which is the not very pithily named Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think it has 11 nations in it. And again, by building better links, particularly for the kind of services businesses, which have not historically been a major part of FTAs, and digital and data elements, then I think we can lead the world in making the UK a better place for modern businesses to be able to trade globally. And if we can do that and get an edge and sustain it, then our foreign direct investment success will continue. The likelihood of the brightest people in the world looking to set up businesses coming here and then doing it here and being able to grow something large here goes up. So that's the kind of that's the sort of work we're looking at, and bounce back plans have been part of that, sector by sector, and we will shortly be doing one in education as well, as part of the refresh of the international education strategy, which has set ambitious targets for bringing more students to the UK and increasing the value of education exports. I mean, it's my favorite export, I should say, controversially to all these businesses not in education. I love education. It's very real money. It's all spent on the salaries of the people who provide it, nearly all of it, in the UK. We don't have to buy stuff from other people in order to provide it here. It creates friendships and partnerships for life, and it brings in some of the most talented people in the world to the UK and makes them much more likely to do business with us going forward. I suppose one shout out would be to the Home Office, as part of my kind of co-chairing of the Education Sector Advisory Board with the Universities Minister. Really good reaching out across government, not least to the Home Office, and seeing real change there, because, as I said, sometimes we've given the impression, having brought the cleverest people in the world to this country, educated them to an even higher level, that our number one priority is to get them the hell out of the country again, which is a pretty bizarre way to behave. So I want us to have, proper rules on it around immigration, that when we get really brilliant people and we bring them here, we should be mentoring and supporting them and encouraging them to set up business here so that they can help the UK. So that's enough in answer to that question.
And the Institute, as an organisation which is heavily involved in education and training and exports it internationally, I wholeheartedly endorse your approach. Just focusing on trade and services again for a bit longer, the primary challenge that we have as a nation, and anyone that's exporting services in the UK over 80% of our exports are services. The problem we face is the behind the border rules and regulations. I just wonder if you could go into a little bit more detail of the government's approach, DIT's approach to trying to flatten those challenges.
Well, Liz Truss is my Secretary of State. I mean, her absolute focus, laser-like focus, is on delivering free trade agreements. It was our manifesto promise that we wanted FTAs to cover 80% of UK trade within 3 years. 4 years ago, when the department was founded, I think there were maybe 30 or 40 trade policy experts in the whole country. We now have a complement of around 800. On getting there, larger than the US trade representative. We were able to have negotiations, 100 at a time, negotiating with America, another 100 dealing with Japan, others involved in other ones. And so the FTA is very much the key to bilateral agreements, when they're obviously between two parties, to try and reduce those barriers. And so one of the things, again, which Liz has absolutely focused on, is having SME chapters in our agreement. So if you look at our US deal, I mean, with the presidential election and all the rest of it, can't put a timetable on when we conclude it, but it's gone very well. And one of the areas where there was a clear agreement was on our SME chapter to facilitate and make it easier for smaller businesses, because precisely as you say, Marco, some of these rules, the difficulty of understanding them, just the frictions, just remove the profitability and viability of entry markets. If we remove those, then we create a dynamic where it's not just the first step of business, it's the fact that then leads to further investment, partnership, new products. And as you and I were saying to each other before we started, the truth is that exporting businesses are more productive, they're more profitable, and they're more resilient than companies that don't export. And yet exporting can be seen by some as, fundamentally scary. And I know that's what your institute is there to do. What my department is here to do is it's not to play down, suggest there aren't challenges, but actually to say, just as any investment strategy has diversification built in, so too should a business strategy. And we're trying to work as hard as we can to make it as easy as possible for businesses to enter new markets and get around some of those rules. And if I can I would like a world in which there were no tariffs, no quotas, and everyone just did business and they accepted a free market and free trade. In a world in which that doesn't happen and that multilateral deals aren't possible, then we're very interested in plurilateral deals, as we call them. But if we can't have that, we'll do a bilateral deal. And if that ends up with a deal with Brazil, say, that gives British companies an advantage that other companies don't have, then obviously that's to the good as well. I mean, ultimately, you want to get rid of anything that gets in the way of trade, because it will not be as economically efficient and will not be as good to help the world's poor and deliver the quality services that come out of trade.
Brilliant, thank you, Mr. The audience has obviously found the chat function. We've got quite a few questions coming in, and one in particular, I'd like, probably it's come in partly in response to the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, talking about the green agenda, and just wondering what the department is doing, what DIT is doing to help and support UK companies in the green and sustainable sector.
Well, that's an excellent question. We are doing a lot. So in the budget earlier this year, the Treasury granted another £2 billion to UK export finance, which, as I said, I'm the minister responsible for, and that's giving us more firepower to support clean growth British firms. An example, we recently provided £230 million export credit for a large scale wind farm off the coast of Taiwan. And just to show how joined up it is, I was in Taiwan last year and I met the President Tsai of Taiwan and signed a memorandum of understanding with Taiwan between the UK and Taiwan on offshore wind, and brought a group of British companies with me on that trip. And we were able to follow up then with UKEF supporting it as well. So we're trying to make all the various levers work together properly. And we've also provided 47.6 million for a large solar farm in Spain. Overall, we are looking to increase our focus on clean growth opportunities around the world. And the Prime Minister set out in his speech that vision of us leading the world even more than we do today on offshore wind. And I'm keen to see us develop our industrial capability to a stronger extent in offshore wind. We've transformed the economics of offshore wind. We've got the world's largest deployment. If I had any, one should never criticize government policy as a government minister, but if I look back, I think we probably could have, if we'd known the success we were going to have with our auction mechanism, which is the best in Europe, and we knew that we could absolutely transform the economics of offshore wind. We went from £120 a megawatt hour from memory in 2015 auction to £39.50 last year. I mean, it's transformed. Suddenly it's a thing that you weren't even sure if it could be viable is suddenly viable, and the costs are continuing to fall. What we didn't perhaps do was make sure enough of that industry was based in the UK. So going forward, we're part and parcel of making the UK the best place in the world to not only to deploy offshore wind, but to run your offshore wind business. I was only talking with one of our trade envoys this morning about speaking to a major Belgian company about getting them to headquarter themselves in the UK for their offshore wind business. That's what we've got to do, is really get out there, build the industrial base here, and then we can be part of. And what I've always wanted us to do is be part of solving this very challenging global problem. And if we can do it in a way which is also good for British jobs and prosperity, all the better. We can sleep easy for having done the right thing, not just delivering at home, but actually helping transform the economics of doing the right thing for others in other countries elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Minister, the department obviously has very clearly got a cross-cutting agenda within government, particularly in market. I wonder if you could just set out maybe a little bit more detail the way in which government operates in market and with the trade commissioners.
Yeah, well, we have staff from DIT in 110 markets around the world. They work in post, as we call it. They work under the authority of Her Majesty's Ambassador, the head of mission, and then across regions of the world, we cut the world into 9 regions. We have HMTCs, Her Majesty's Trade Commissioners, and they come up with a regional trade strategy, which sets priority sectors and markets within there, and then they work with the team in country to come up with the best possible approach. So I've just been meeting with Judith Slater, who's our HMTC covering Eastern Europe and many of the STANs, ECAN, and then she works closely with the teams, as I say, in different countries, whether it's Turkey, whatever else. And so that's how we have it globally. And then at home we have sector teams dealing with certain industrial sectors, and then we also have ITAs, international trade advisors throughout England, who provide direct support to SMEs as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Turning now a question of the pan-national procedures and processes and organisations. Obviously, the issue of the WTO returns as an ongoing point of discussion and debate. Now, obviously, the new Director General of the WTO is to be appointed, and we have a very credible candidate in the former Secretary of State for the DIT, Dr. Liam Fox. I just wonder, what do you see will be the government's approach with regards to the WTO and our views of the organisation?
Well, we aim to be the most vocal and firm supporter of liberal, rules-based international order that there is, and the WTO is at the heart of that. That's not to say it can't be reformed and improved, but a world where might is right is one in which there are going to be more trade frictions, and in which the world economy is not going to grow at the same pace, and those who think they can abuse the system for their own personal ends actually will impoverish not only themselves but all of us. So we think the WTO is at the heart of creating, say, a system in which the small player and the very large power are held to account and have to follow the same rules. So we're very keen on that. Julian Braithwaite's been our ambassador there for many years. He's absolutely first class. And as you say, my former boss has, with his characteristic energy, been lobbying and working hard with full support from DIT as well, and got through the first round against the odds, and continues to. I think there's a real snowball backing him. I think the second round was yesterday of voting, and I haven't found out yet the results, but we're backing Liam 100%. But whoever wins, we think the WTO is important, and that's why it's very important to have the right Director General who can work across the world and help take a kind of fractured global trading environment and see what we can do to bring it back together again.
Brilliant. Thank you. And that rules-based approach is more important now than ever with regards to growing the export potential. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. I'd like to give you just an opportunity, Minister, to just spend a few moments to explain, to encourage, to evangelize to any businesses or organizations, particularly MSMEs, the small micro businesses, who maybe haven't thought of exporting as being a fundamental part or a great opportunity for them. Just for you to set out why they should be engaging in exporting and the ways in which they can access the support, the various ranges of support that government offers for exports.
Well, thank you. Firstly, I mean, there's a whole world out there, obviously, the obvious thing, and this technology that's allowing us to do this means that as a micro business, you come over on the screen. You might have a pipe on your wall like I do by my flag that does God knows what, and it should be removed. But in truth, we can present as well on this as a government minister does, or even Marco does in this virtual environment. So you can represent yourself properly. You can sell across the world and get going that way. So, but this isn't the only way that the digital elements have changed things. There are now, of course, business-to-business marketplaces as well as B2C, business-to-consumer marketplaces. We're focusing as a department really hard on that. We want to transform our services so that our digital services are better, easier to use. If we want to reach more businesses with the same amount of people and resource and serve more SMEs, we've got to become more efficient, sure, but we've also got to work out how can we do that. And it's of course digital that offers the opportunity for that, both more self-service, but also trying to work with, and I'm looking forward to meeting with you, Marco, to discuss this further, not only how can we encourage online and other forms of education more, so SMEs can learn about, how do you go about exporting? How do you work out all those countries? Which one's the best one for me? I'm a micro business. Is it Japan? Is it Latin America? Or should I start close to me? Should I go to Ireland? I don't know. And to have learn the kind of rudimentaries, having a sort of GCSE minimum of in exporting, to be able to make those calculations, identify some priorities, and then look for the right assistance to enter that market in the most cost-effective way. I say these big e-commerce marketplaces, from Amazon to all the others, we've created tie-ups with, I think it's 42 now, it might be 43, of major global marketplaces, and you can find out about the service we provide on great.gov.uk. But or by talking to your local ITA, because you have a local ITA, certainly if you're in England, and you'll get support from the devolved administrations, if you're in Northern Ireland, Wales, or Scotland, and they will be able to help you as well. But we've got special deals with those major e-commerce marketplaces and can help you list. I mean, one of the first things to do is you can list your product or services onto on those without setting foot overseas. And if you get interest, you can spark up a call like this and start to share data and start to sell. So I just say I think it is easier than it was before. And we, as I also mentioned, UK export finance, we have export insurance cover available. So if you can't get it in the marketplace, then UKEF is there to stand behind businesses, because their mantra is that no viable UK export should fail for lack of finance. So UKEF is worth looking into as well. And I'm not sure how well I'm evangelizing, Marco, but I think it is probably easier than it has been to get your product visible, to engage with the foreign buyer, build trust and confidence, and do so in giving you the ability to assess whether it makes commercial sense to get on an aeroplane, or indeed whether you even have to get on an aeroplane. And we at DIT, with, as I say, our advisors around the country, our sector teams here, and the teams right across the world, our whole job is to try and create services which can support you on that journey. I think it's there are so many businesses that have done well, and I'd encourage others to follow. And meanwhile, we are country by country, region by region, lowering the barriers to entry and be part of a brilliant national resurgence. We've got to 31% last year of GDP. Let's get to 35. Why do we assume the Germans are going to be greater exporters than us? We have the English language. We have so much creativity. Nature of trade is changing. It's probably moving more to services, more to our strengths. And creativity has never been more important. And we're just, the melting pot that is the UK seems to produce brilliant computer scientists, AI scientists, filmmakers, textile producers, clothing, fashion, events, you name it. And I think there's an amazing correlation between what the world wants and is moving towards and what the UK is good at. So, I just think if we do our job right, that's as government first and foremost. Government's first thing is try not to screw anything up. So if we can not do that, and we can genuinely add value, and the most important thing for government is to get out of your way. Second is if we can get out of your way and not inhibit you by providing stuff which is genuinely valuable and only government can do, then be reasonably humble about it. Then actually, there's no reason why the country can't prosper, and that's what I'm here for. If we prosper, then we can, the country can go from strength to strength. We're able to invest in the NHS, public services, deal with pandemics, be more generous to those who we'd like to be more generous to, and be a good global citizen to boot. So it's, where does all this come from? It comes from economic strength, economic engagement. Without that, you can't keep your country secure, you can't look after the poor, you can't deliver good healthcare for people. If you get that right, you can. So you should not only feel that you are building your own business and looking after your own family and building your own prosperity, but you're all part and parcel of creating a stronger Britain, which hopefully is projecting positive values in the world, and you can stand and be proud to be part of that. So thank you all very much.
Here, Minister, brilliant. And it's clear that we have not only a strong, informed and passionate, but a completely dedicated advocate for exports within government and the values and benefits that they bring to the whole of the UK, not just the economic life. So, Minister, thank you so much for taking the time from your busy schedule today. We really appreciate it. You have indeed hopefully inspired some of our listeners, those who are already exporting to explore new markets, and those who are yet to export to begin their export journey. And the government is obviously doing something right, because as you've said, we have grown our exports, we have lifted ourselves against international markers, and that in a time of immense global instability and difficulty. So congratulations to the government, and I would just like to leave you with the clear sense that both within the Institute as the organisation and within our membership, we are here to help and support government to amplify your message and provide that additional support to encourage businesses to begin their export journeys. And if ever you need help and support, you have willing allies in ourselves. So thank you, Minister, for taking the time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for the questions that have come through. There will be a recording available after this event, and more details of this recording and future events is available on export.org.uk. I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.